So this story starts with me putting 10,000 miles on this skateboard and ends with me getting run over in a tunnel in Boston, Massachusetts, all because I really wanted to get a job in radio. I started my freshman year at Boston University in the month of September, and by the month of October, I realized that there was nothing these people were going to teach me that was going to help me get a job in radio, the job that I really wanted, that I couldn't learn by actually doing the job in radio. So I went and got myself an internship. And by the end of that freshman year, I had that internship plus 3 jobs, and I was still going to school. Now, Boston isn't the biggest city in the world, but it is pretty tough for a half-blind kid to get around, especially when his mom won't let him bring his bicycle to school. By the time I'd gone to college, I'd lost a good chunk of my eyesight, obviously not as bad as it is now, but it definitely wasn't safe for me to be riding a bike around, at least according to my mom. I told her that I was getting all these internships and jobs, and I asked if I could come home and get my bicycle, and she's like, no way, I'm not having my half-blind son drive around the city of Boston. But my schedule had gotten so hectic and crazy, I literally didn't have the time to walk to everything. Now, if you know anything about Boston, this is the point at which you'd say, but what about public transportation? The problem with public transportation for me was threefold. One is the fact that public transportation is so slow in Boston, you can generally walk faster than the train will get you there. 2 is the fact that when I was there, the train stopped running at midnight and didn't start again until 6 a.m., which was really inconvenient. And the third problem, which was unique to me, was that in order to get where you were going in Boston, you had to get on the right train. And the only way to do that was to see the letters B, C, D, or E written on the train, and I couldn't read it. They were supposed to announce it, but they never did. And I don't mean never like occasionally, I mean like never. So, by the time my sophomore year started, I had a job as a traffic reporter. Yes, a blind guy was telling everybody in the city of Boston where to drive and how to drive. That job was 5.7 miles away from my house and started at midnight. That shift ended at 6 a.m., at which point I would go get some breakfast and then have to go to class, which was 3.7 miles away. After class, I went back to my original internship, which was 1.3 miles away. After the internship ended in early afternoon, I had to go back to class, which was another 1.3 miles. And then finally, I went back home to do homework and try and catch what little sleep I could get, which was 2 miles. That was a total of 14 miles a day, 5 days a week is 70 miles, 3,640 miles a year. Now on Saturday, I'd gotten a job on Cape Cod as a DJ. You see, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in radio, I just knew I wanted to do something. So I had all these different jobs. I was a producer, a production director, a traffic reporter, and a rock radio DJ. So on Saturdays, I had to ride my skateboard to South Station, which was 5.1 miles away, and then when I took the bus to Cape Cod, the radio station was another 2 miles away. 52 weeks a year, that trip was 738.4 miles. And on Sundays, yes, there was more. On Sundays, I went back to my original radio station where I had my internship, but I was working, getting paid, I think, $8 an hour as a producer. That was 4.2 miles each way for a total of 436.8 miles. So, altogether, that was 4,815.2 miles per year. Add in trips to the grocery store, the gym, my girlfriend's place, and other just life events, and I was actually way over 5,000 miles per year. And there was no way I was going to be able to walk that, which is why on one of my trips home, I think maybe on Thanksgiving of my freshman year, I went and grabbed this skateboard. Was skateboarding around the city of Boston half-blind safe? No, I had enough vision at that point to see some stuff. I mean, I could see people on the sidewalk, but they were just blobs. And most of the time I could see cars, but I had a giant blind spot, like a hole in the middle of my vision. So every once in a while, cars and things just would kind of appear in front of me, and I'd have to adjust very last second. I didn't want to ride on the sidewalks because, God forbid, I didn't see a person and I slammed into them with my skateboard. That would be horrible. So I rode on the streets in that little space between where the cars parked and where the other cars drove, just that narrow little area where you see bikers go a lot of the time. And I was doing this every month of the year. Rain, snow, sleet, shine, like the mailman or something. It was actually kind of cool and peaceful to be biking through Boston at like midnight or 6 a.m., these odd times, during a snowstorm when the plow trucks had just plowed and I'd be going along right down the middle of the street on my skateboard. Actually, I like those times the most because no cars on the road, no people opening their doors that I had to dodge out of the way of at the last second. None of this was even remotely easy. But if you've seen my other videos about setting goals, realizing the obstacles, finding a way around them, and follow through to achieve them, this is a prime example of that. I really wanted a job in radio, and the only way for me to do it at the time, because the internet wasn't really a thing. I mean, it existed, but no one was doing their radio shows from home at this point. The only way to do it was to be at these places. And since I didn't have enough money for cabs, I couldn't really do the public transportation system system in the city, and my mom wouldn't let me take a bike to school. The only way I could do it was either run really fast, which wasn't going to be possible, or ride this skateboard. So that's what I did. Now, did I get into a lot of accidents? Yeah, mostly I was just crashing into little things that I didn't see, or my skateboard wheels would get stuck in a crack or on some debris on the road that I didn't know was there, and I'd wipe out. I did get hit by a couple/few cars during my time on the skateboard, but it's what I needed to do. I couldn't stop, which leads me to the accident I mentioned at the beginning of the story. Years later, I was finally making enough money. I didn't have to go home and get the bike that my parents were holding hostage, so I bought my own. I know. It wasn't smart, but I was getting exhausted of skateboarding all over the city of Boston and beyond. And I would ride the bike in that same spot between where the cars would park and the ones would drive, but I was always afraid to be too close to the cars that were parked because I couldn't see if there was anyone in those cars that might be opening a door. So I rode a little further out into the street than I was supposed to. And one time I was about to go under a tunnel and I thought I might have seen something ahead of me. So I swerved out further into the middle of the road and I got nailed by a vehicle coming up behind me. They shoved me into the tunnel and I lost control, went up the side, the embankment of the tunnel, went off the bike, flew up into the air, smashed into the roof of the tunnel, the bridge on top of me, came back down and was knocked senseless. When I finally came to, I actually called my boss because he was the last guy I'd called on my cell phone. He came. My boss, Jason, came from work, found me. I didn't even know how to tell him exactly where I was, but he found me and then directed an ambulance to come find me. It was the only time I've ever ridden in an ambulance, thankfully. And as they were piecing me all together and trying to put my skin all back on, because a lot of it had gotten scraped off, my boss actually agreed to let me work from home from then on. So the obstacle of transportation was a pretty big one, but sometimes when you've got a goal and there's only one way to accomplish it, being at the radio station, doing the talk radio, the sports radio, the rock radio, and the traffic reporting, I had to be there. And sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.